Hi, I'm Lisa. Welcome to my show, Black Coffee and Grits. This will be primarily a show about cross stitch, but it also could include other arts and crafts, fiber arts from time to time. So, Black Coffee and Grits. I absolutely love color, but if you asked me what my favorite black floss was, I would hands down say Black Coffee by Color and Cotton. I love it because it's not a harsh black and it has that beautiful brown variegation in it, or sometimes gray depending on the dye lot. And I just love that it's not just flat black. Who doesn't love a variegated fancy floss? Oh, me, so much. And then if you asked me what my favorite white was, I would say Weeks Dyworks Grits. And the reason why I love that floss is because, again, it's variegated. It's cream and white, and it's not just a harsh white. So I fell in love with fancy floss, as you can probably tell. I'm going to try not to say a 1,000 times, but it happens. I am a compulsive ummer, I've decided. What else do I want to tell you? I want to tell you a little bit about me, a quick introduction, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get into a finish parade because I have been stitching all summer and I have some freshly framed pieces back from the frame shop, as well as some FFOs that I did myself, and then just a stack of things that I have finished. Not FFO'd, but finished. So if you're into that kind of thing, hang on. And also, there is going to be some sewing, quilting included today, and I'll use that term loosely because I don't consider myself a quilter yet, but I'm learning. So, I said I'm Lisa. I'm a native Texan, born in Weatherford, just west of here. I currently live in Fort Worth, Texas. I've lived all over the state, but only in Texas. So, I went to college in Denton at the University of North Texas. I'm going to tell a little bit of my story, mainly as it pertains to cross stitch, okay? And I know you're here for the cross stitch, but I want you to know a little bit about my background too. So, sorry. So, I studied interior design at the University of North Texas, and it is a true art school in the sense that I won't tell you how old I am, but I predate barely computer-aided drafting. I did learn computer-aided drafting at the end of my course, but when I started in the design school at North Texas, it was mostly a fine arts program, like we were drawing and painting and that kind of thing. So I should back up and tell you that my real love for cross stitch came from my grandmother, Juanita. She was someone who was always either doing needlework or quilting. She did a lot of hand quilting. She had one of those massive frames when I was a kid. I remember that thing being set up all the time, and she just loved hand quilting. But this piece that I actually still have, I'm so proud to say I still have this, is a stamped embroidery kit that she and I actually worked on together. She sort of tricked me. I was about probably 7, 8 years old, and I would be at her house and she would be stitching on this and I would want to help. And so she kept telling me that it was for her Aunt Ethel. And finally, when we got to the middle, I said, Nanny, Aunt Ethel doesn't start with an L. And she giggled and she was like, well, it's really for you. And so she gifted this to me for my birthday, and I will treasure this forever, obviously. And I think she sewed and FFO'd this. I'm sure she did. I wish she was still here. I miss her so much to this day. She's a wonderful woman. So she taught me to love needle art, and so I made some of these little X's, probably the ones that I can see are a little bit off. And I love that she didn't take it out because that's just the kind of woman she was. She made 1,000 French knots in this, and I'm so proud of her because French knots are hard. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my influences. One of them was this sweet lady right here that made this pillow. Another one would be my aunt. My aunt, Vicky. She was also an avid cross stitcher and sewer. She was like always sewing something. And she made me this cute little bird sampler. And you guys, these are like well tattered and worn. And if I had only known as a child how many hours went into making this, I probably wouldn't have played with it with my baby dolls. But we'll just say it's well loved and adored. She made me this cute little bird sampler. Obviously, I treasured it too. I've hung on to it all these years. Vicky is someone who over the years has just, she's hemmed a lot of things for me. She actually sewed a lot of things for my son's room when he was, before he was born, when I was decorating it. So I always would ask her to teach me to sew, and she would just do it because she was always like, this isn't something good to learn on, which I think is funny. But she's probably right. She was like, this is mending. You don't want to learn on this, or, you know, hemming or whatever. I'm short, so I needed a lot of things hemmed over the years. So another person in my life that influenced my love for needle art would be my mother-in-law, Julie. And she's no longer with us. She passed away in 2010. But we inherited some beautiful things from her, including this Fostoria glass collection behind me. All kinds of fun things. She had a big boy doll collection. And she also cross-stitched. So when my husband went to Michigan, when they were selling off the estate, he rescued, I'm so proud of him for rescuing these because I wasn't with him. He rescued these adorable cross-stitch pieces. And these were probably like Dimensions kits or Bucilla kits. There's a little boy and a little girl. And I have these hanging outside of our playroom. And I adore them, obviously. I also adopted some cross-stitch that she completed that were Christmas ornaments, as well as her whole stash. So I was the lucky one to get to do that. She was someone who cross-stitched samplers. She started with her first grandson. She cross-stitched a birth sampler for him, and then she passed the torch to me. So the next grandson that was born in the family, I got to stitch the birth sampler for him. And then, you know, from there on, I was the birth sampler stitcher in the family. So I adore my time with her. Sad that she is gone, but her memory lives on every time I stitch, just like with my grandmother. So another person who was influential in my life as far as needle art goes would be my dad's mom, Jewel, and she's actually still living. She sadly, she had a stroke back in February, so she's not in great shape. She's definitely living out her last days, but I treasure every moment with her. She was an avid knitter. She did teach me to crochet. I didn't really take on with that. I would just get way too tight with it. So let's just say that's not my art. I won't say never though. I will never, that's one thing I've learned about cross stitch and art is never say never, because you start to experiment with things that you think, I would never do that, like 40 count, things like that. So back to design school, hopefully I can tell this and it makes a little bit of sense, but I kind of wanted to show you just a little bit about my background as far as interior design, because it was super fun and part of my journey and some art. So you'll think it's interesting. So it'll be a tiny bit of show and tell. So like I said, it was a traditional school in that it did have an art department, which is so cool. And so I had to learn to draw and paint, watercolor. One of my first classes was actually just a charcoal drawing class. And I remember at first I was so scared of it, but eventually this came out. And I kept this and I framed it. It's one of those, I think it's from a sycamore tree. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know all my trees, but it's one of those little seed things that fall off. And it came out and I was like, oh, I did it. And I'm so glad I saved this and I was able to frame it fairly recently. Also, as I mentioned in design school, eventually we got to CAD. We got to computer aided drawing. But at first, and I won't bore you to death with this, but I wanted to show you one of the hand renderings in watercolors. This might have been marker. No, it might be a mix of marker and watercolor. But this is one of the hand renderings that I did. So I learned to love modern furniture in art school. I had never lived with it, but I just found it fascinating, like an art form. So I guess I can show you these other boards because I brought them down. So designed some window treatments and also did floor plans and all that. And literally every single one of those little boards is drawn with pen and ink. So that was a tedious part of design school, but also really super fun. Where am I going with this? All over the place. All over the place. And I thought I was going to be so organized. Like I had told this story in my head, and I have a mountain of stuff here to show you. I'm so excited though. I have a lot of finishes. Let me show you so also I'm married for 14 years to my husband Tyler. We have a beautiful son, Will, who's 13. I cannot believe I have a teenager. I am semi-retired from interior design since about 8 years ago. I decided that I wanted to take a break from, a super full-time job that could be high stress at times. And so I started a small boutique in my home. I started selling LuLaRoe clothing, and what drew me to LuLaRoe clothing is the color. It's very bold. If you've seen it, you know it. You'll never forget it. It has changed and evolved a bit over the years, but it's definitely, they're not afraid of color and pattern, and I love that. So I started selling LuLaRoe clothing from my home. I love the flexibility of it. A few years later, I added on a line called Color Street, which is a nail polish, and I do still sell that as well as LuLaRoe, very part-time. The flexibility allows me to fund my craft habit, as you probably all know. This can be an expensive hobby, but certainly a fun and rewarding one. So I'm not wearing nail polish today, and I'm a little bit shamed by that because I usually always have my nails done in Color Street, and I love the product. It's amazing. Sometimes your nails need a little break. So I'm giving them the well-needed break. Also, about 3 years ago, when my son completed fourth grade. Fourth grade was, that transition year for us in life because COVID happened. And so part of the year was remote. No, that was third grade. Part of that year was remote. And then that rolled into fourth grade being partly remote too, because my son is asthmatic, or he was. Thankfully, he's kind of outgrown that. But, we weren't really sure. So we were trying to do the best we could for him. So he started the year remote from home. And then eventually he did go back to school. And he completed fourth grade at his private school. And after that, we decided we wanted to try homeschooling. So since then, we have been homeschoolers. It's kind of strange to say that I'm a teacher, but I think that I'm qualified as a teacher now, especially since I have 2 years of experience. So he's going to be going into 7th grade this year. We're excited about that. We haven't quite started yet. As homeschoolers, you have some flexibility, so that's wonderful. I do cross-stitch a lot during the day. Between lessons or while he's working on things, I definitely pick up cross-stitch. I cross-stitch most days, I'll say that. I keep a book of days. I love to write down what I'm doing. This is a kind of a journaling thing that started for me, and I didn't always decorate it, but now I do. I love to put stickers in my book of days. So as we get on a regular Flosstube schedule, I will start showing you these, and I use this as a tool to just keep up with what I'm doing, and I just think it's fun. I think it's fun to decorate, and I love to put stickers in it. Okay, I had other notes. Listen, I always have good intentions. I live in organized chaos. I like to think that I'm organized, but I have a difficult time staying that way. I think that's true for most creative types. Do you guys find that to be true? So let me show you, now that we're into the finished parade portion of the show, the program, I'll go back and I'll show you the first piece that I shouldn't say this is the first piece because I gifted some of the birth samplers, but I did do a birth sampler for my son that I obviously still have, and I have this framed. So I want to show you this piece. This was a Bucilla kit. I actually still have the pattern. I had so much fun stitching on this. Of course, it was just an Ada kit, but this and just doing the birth samplers really kind of got me into the groove of like, I'm a big girl stitcher now, not just stitching with my nanny. My kid didn't have a chance but to like baseball because I decorated his entire room in baseball. I love the Texas Rangers. You'll see in a minute, I have another piece I want to show you that I just got framed. So Dimensions kit, I think I probably added this extra border, which that was a pretty bold choice of me, wasn't it? To add all those extra stitches, but I love how this turned out, super cute. I finished it, I won't say I finished it the first year he was born, but I did also make a Bucilla felt stocking for him, and I do know that that was finished before his first Christmas. Best laid plans always don't work out, right? But we just keep working at it. Eventually it got finished and it hangs on his wall today. We all know how that could go. Another piece I wanted to show you. So, another stitcher who was influential to me. And I met her through interior design. One of my best and favorite clients, Sue Anderson. She's part of the cross stitch community. And she introduced me to linen. So scrumptious. Don't we all love some linen fabric? I know I did. The first time I saw her stitching on linen, I was like, what is that? What are you doing? Because, you know, I had been stitching these kits because that's kind of all I knew at that point. So she showed me linen fabric, and boy, down the rabbit hole I went. She told me about the Stitch Niche. So my husband and I ventured over to the Stitch Niche over in Arlington, which is my local needlework shop. At the time, it was owned by a sweet lady named Kathy, who has since passed. She took her time with me. I told her I wanted to experiment with linen, but I was afraid. I didn't know if I could see it. I didn't know if I could do it. You guys. She cut this piece of linen out in the shop on the spot. She knew I was going to buy this Plum Street pattern. She got the pattern out before I had even paid for it, helped me pick out the floss, over dyes. I was then introduced to those as well, probably also in part to Sue, but she just got it all out and let me start stitching right there in the shop. And she was like, I think this is 40 count, and it may be even smaller than that. She might have really tricked me. She was like, if you can stitch on this, you can stitch on that. So pretty sure this, and I don't have great notes because, you know, back then I didn't know Flosstube even existed, and I never ever imagined, again, never say never, that I would create my own Flosstube. But here we are. So I didn't write down what all these things were stitched on, but I did do a good job of dating things back then. Occasionally I would. My husband is someone who can encourage me to do that, but I stitched this cute little, wait, I have notes about this. I love Plum Street. This is the chart that I stitched. Maxim and Zoya from Plum Street Samplers. I love that it calls for 36 counts. I'm pretty sure that's why I stitched it on. I love that she put special notes in here. And did I read all these special notes? I did. And then some of the notes I immediately dismissed because that's just how I do. But it said, did you know that the feathers on top of a peacock's head are called its crest? And she tells you to please long stitch these in black and stitch the Algerian eyelet at the top of each long stitch. Did I know what an Algerian eyelet was? No, I did not. I'm pretty sure I made Smyrna's. Hey, but I think you still get the idea. So I wasn't afraid. I just jumped in with both feet. I stitched on linen. I stitched with overdyed floss. I fell in love. And I think from then on, I was hooked. I was already the birth sampler stitcher, but now I had gone down a rabbit hole with other types of samplers. And so I spent a good amount of money in the shop that day. Loved stitching on this. Thankfully, it worked in my favor that my husband's mom was a cross stitcher because he was on board. He actually picked out some of the pieces that I later stitched. So I won't show you all those today, but maybe in a future episode I will. I'm trying to make sure I'm saying all the things I want to say. What next? Back to the notes. So this opened up my world, obviously. Now I'm going to show you 4 pieces that I got back from the framer that weren't necessarily stitched this year, but I actually finally did get them framed. So things are everywhere all over my table, so excuse my reach, excuse the crinkle. You know what happens around a crafter's world. It gets a little messy at times. And I probably won't have details. I probably won't even give you details on every little thing as far as fabric and fibers. I hope you guys cannot hear my stomach growling. It is really talking. That's embarrassing. I probably won't give you all the details on fabrics and fibers and that kind of thing, but I do make excellent notes of that now. So if you ever have questions about something that you see, ask me, because I might have it written down on a note card, and I'm really good about putting up details if I know them on Instagram. So I have an Instagram. It is Black Coffee and Grits. So you can find me over there and follow me there if you want to see color conversions and that kind of thing. And I am someone who definitely picks a lot of my own fabrics. I don't always follow the recipe. Sometimes I do, but not always. I like to experiment. I think I've decided that this cross-stitch journey is kind of an experiment, and I definitely see it as art. So sometimes I'll stitch on linen, sometimes I'll stitch on Aida, sometimes I'll stitch with DMC, sometimes I'll stitch with the overdyes. I'm kind of all over the place. Ask me what my style is. The answer is probably eclectic, and you'll probably see that today. So another thing I did over the summer is I went to, actually this was not the summer. I've been on several cross-stitch retreats this year. In January, that was not summer, that was winter, very winter. Kind of like to go back there right now. In January, I went to Stitch Away and I met Angie, and she was passing the stash, and she had in her pass the stash this chart, which is Matter's Choice by Carriage House Samplings. I snagged that thing up so fast, and the next day we went up to Craft Gallery and I kitted it up. I kitted it up on a piece of tarnish by Picture This Plus. Beautiful, I think 32 count linen. And I picked out, I know, I'm deviating already, not black coffee, which is my favorite black, but I experimented with another black called Carriage Black from the Gentle Arts. So I really like the way this turned out. I was anxious to stitch a monochromatic sampler, and I couldn't put this thing down. I have whips, but sometimes I tend to just get on something and go, go, go. And this was one of those. I could not put it down. I had so much fun stitching it. And even though the dots were a bit tedious up at the top, I did them. And if I got off, I did fix it. And that's not always the case. Sometimes I am a fudger. So took this to my local frame shop, Marty and Pat's, here in Fort Worth on Camp Bowie, and picked out this lovely black frame for it. And I just love how it turned out. I did use museum glass on it. That was something that Sue Anderson actually taught me about, was museum glass. And I love it because it doesn't even look like it's there. Like you can really clearly see all the stitches, but then, you know, the stitching itself is protected. Okay, if you saw my table, you would say that girl is the Hot Mess Express. And you ain't wrong. Okay, another piece I stitched back in the spring that I had framed up in May is this one. This is Take Me Out to the Ballgame by Little House Needleworks. I stitched it on, I believe this is chocolate milk or milk chocolate fabrics by Stephanie. So sorry. I would say I'm somewhat dyslexic in that department. I can't remember which way those words go. Mostly the called for floss. I did substitute out the blue for Battleship from Color and Cotton. I love the variegation in that floss. I wanted to use it. And also, if you noticed, I made this a commemorative piece. So I told you I love baseball. The Texas Rangers won the World Series in 2023. It was one of the best years of my life. I really enjoyed, like, when I say I'm a fan, I'm an avid fan. Like, my grandmother, Jewel, is a baseball fan. She definitely passed that down. My dad's a big baseball fan. Over the years, we would go mostly to every opening day for a long time. My husband, when he and I met, he was playing in a wood bat league, which I found that to be very attractive. And so just this love of baseball is kind of woven into my family. And like I said, Will didn't have a choice. I put baseball, we have such a cool collection of baseball memorabilia. It kind of all went in his room. He's learning to love the game. He did play Little League, but he didn't become a ball player like I necessarily thought. He probably doesn't even know that I named him after Will Clark. But that's how deep my love for baseball goes. So I had this chart in my stash for quite a long time. I decided I wanted to make it commemorative, so I did change at the top. I re-charted World Series and then Texas and Arizona with the runs and hits from the game. And it's just the sweetest piece. It means so much to me. So I picked out a frame that I thought looked like wood bats. So it's just a really cool wood kind of variegated frame. And what else did I want to tell you about this? This is where I completed my French knot course. There are over 30 French knots in this. So I had to just say, get over it. You can do a French knot. I watched a video, and I will say, sometimes I am a in-hand stitcher. Like, I like to stitch in hand, and other times I like to use a hoop, and it totally depends. And one thing I learned about French knots is that you need that tension, and so it needs to be in a hoop in order to make a successful French knot. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but they got done. Okay, another frame. You guys, I'm also someone who I stitch a lot of things, and then I don't always FFO them right away. Sometimes they wind up in a pile. That might actually be another like special video that we do, is like what's in the drawer. I have been better about going through them seasonally and picking out things that I want to have framed. So we can either do a parade of all those things, or I can just show them as I'm getting them finished. And that's probably a better motivator for me to FFO them seasonally. This had been hanging out in that pile for a little bit. I probably could look back and tell you, because I have my note cards here. And there's no note card on this one. Flosstube. But I do remember, and this is written in my book of days, because this was a lint stitch last year. So 2023 lint stitch. It is Eye on the Sparrow by Silver Creek Samplers. I love the colors on this. It's mostly stitched with DMC. I So it was a lint stitch. So every morning what I would do is I'd get up and I'd do my devotional and I would stitch one strand of floss, just one strand. And I was amazed at how much progress could be made with just one strand a day. Now, when Lent was over, I wanted this finished because I was far enough down in it that I was like, I want to finish this. So here she is. I believe it's stitched on Vintage Country Mocha, pretty sure. And I love this frame. This was actually in the ready-made selection over at Marty and Pat's Frame Shop. They have some, that are kind of just already hanging up on the wall, and it just fit it perfectly. It's a beautiful kind of rose gold textured, and I think I'm going to hang this up in my master bedroom. I can't wait to hang these because they have been sitting here waiting for a floss tube for some time. So it's time to put them on the wall and enjoy them in their spaces. One more piece that I had framed at Marty and Pat's. And do I have a card on this? Probably not. This was also, see, I didn't date this one. Sometimes it's good to date things. You know what I think I'd like to start doing? Is I think I'd like to start putting on the back like the details about the piece. So, do you guys hear those cicadas? It is full on summer in Texas and they are so loud. If you've never been to Texas in August, don't. It's really hot. This is the time of year when I want to escape and I want to go to the mountains and stay there until mid to late October. Because like I said, fall is my favorite season. Maybe I didn't say that, but it is. I love fall. Summer, meh, because it can be so hot here. But let's talk about snow, okay, shall we? I stitched this piece, I think in 2023, it really doesn't matter. It's a beautiful Cottage garden samplings piece called Christmas Eve. I actually pulled out the pattern because I couldn't remember. A Time for All Seasons. So this is a series, A Time for All Seasons, series number 12. So there probably is one per month. I should probably go look at these and see if I want to stitch some more of them. I just fell in love with this Santa. I thought he was awesome. I love that he's just, I don't know, he looks like he's from another country and it's snowy, and I love the cardinal, and the variegation in this is beautiful. A little anecdote, is that the right word? A little story about this piece. I got to about right here on this beautiful coat and ran out of the Gentle Arts Rose Garden floss. I don't remember when I kitted this up. I don't know why I didn't get 2 skeins of that overdyed floss, but I didn't. And so when I ran out, I ordered some more. I don't think they had it at Stitch Niche, so I believe I ordered it from the Silver Needle up in Oklahoma. They sent it to me and it was pink. My rose garden was red. So I was in a tizzy, and I eventually ended up, I think I used Ladybug from Classic Colorworks, and I just kind of made it work, and it blended. And no one else would ever know, but I know the labor of love that goes into these cross-stitch pieces. Picked a really fun black frame for this one. I debated about using this frame for Matter's Choice. They had a larger version of it. Eventually settled on using that other one that it sort of has a little like floral motif on it. This one kind of does too, a little bit branchy around the inside of the frame. I love the brown on it, the fact that it's like, it's not just, again, not that harsh black. It's black coffee-esque, I would say. What next? I want to show you something sewing related. So, as I told you, my Aunt Vicky was like my mender all these years. She's also gotten into quilting. My mom has gotten into quilting too over the last few years. Mostly she would probably grit her teeth at me about mending an old quilt that was, it's been in the family for years. I remember grabbing that quilt when I was a kid, dragging that thing everywhere. We used it. It's so soft. It's the softest thing, and to this day, I get under that and I immediately fall asleep. So I was like, it was, it was coming apart. It was getting tattered, and I was like, Mom, you have to try to fix this, like, because I need to still be able to use it. So she painstakingly repaired that thing. Probably not the kind of quilting she wanted to be doing. I say all that to say I never really did any sewing until this year. This year, for my birthday, I won't tell you which one, was a big one, I asked my husband for a sewing machine. I, through the cross stitch retreats and like meeting people, I met all these quilters that may have made amazing things, and they all like swore by the Juki. So I told them I want a Juki sewing machine. So I got a Juki sewing machine. And in May, around my birthday, actually, they always go to West Virginia for a family fishing adventure camping. They always try to get me to go with them. And I do love to fish and camp and adventure, but I also adore that little quiet time that comes when they're gone and I don't have to do anything like cook meals or clean or get dressed. So I usually do, actually, honestly, I usually do some big project while they're gone, like paint or, do some big decorating thing around the house, clean the carpets. I know that's not a fun decorating thing, but it's something that needs to be done, and it's always great to do while they're, not here to trample up the floors. So this year, I made a quilt. I will stand up and show you this, but I'll tell you a little bit about it first. This is a quilt top. I shouldn't say I made a quilt. It's not completely quilted yet, but I pieced a top. How about that? I did it. And this is someone that has literally never sewn anything much more than like a sleeping bag for a Barbie doll. So I've made like one seam, and it didn't even have to be straight. But I consulted with my quilting friends, and I also watched a tutorial from Kimberly Jolly at the Fat Quarter Shop, and I used their pattern, their free pattern called Jelly Roll Twist, and her videos like helped me so much, and I was just careful. I definitely watched my seam allowance, and I did a lot of pressing. I'm using press and not iron. Aren't you so proud of me, Kimberly? Because in the past, I would not have used that quilting term press. I would have definitely ironed it. And I don't iron. I don't like to iron. I don't iron. I couldn't tell you the last time I ironed clothes. One of the great things about LuLaRoe clothing is that it doesn't need to be ironed. My husband, his work shirts, I either send them to the cleaners, or they have all this amazing fabric now that you don't even have to iron. It's like press free. I don't know what they call it. At any rate, I ironed. I got out the iron and I got hot, and I had so much fun, and I made a big mess, and I got fabric all over the house. I don't really have a dedicated like sewing. I have my sewing machine set up full time, which is awesome, but it's in my LuLaRoe room, so there's other stuff in there. Maybe one day in retirement, I'll have a full-on craft room. Actually, what I really want is like a basement with all the things. If we're gonna really dream, let's dream big. So I spread out, and I use my my kitchen island and my dining table to piece this and put it together. I should tell you what the fabric is. I bought these jelly rolls. I had these jelly rolls for a couple years from Moda. It's the Cozy Up line from Corey Yoder. Fell in love with this. These are my colors. This is my jam right here. Okay, let's stand up so I can show you. Maybe I can show you a bit more of the quilt. I should probably have like hung this up. Live and learn. Maybe I'll insert a picture of it so you can see more of it. But this is the gist of it. And I just had so much fun with this. I love all these fabrics. I love a buffalo check. I have black and white buffalo check curtains in my living area, my dining area. My house is like pretty open concept. I also have buffalo check, like watercolored, kind of grapefruit colored wallpaper. It's from the Magnolia collection. Don't you guys love Joanna Gaines? So yeah, I love a buffalo check. So there's a lot of buffalo checks in this. I love the dainty florals. I love orange. I love a pop of color. Like I said, I love color. I really do. It's probably one of my favorite things to play around with. And I like to pick bold colors. But it's always grounded with black and white. Black coffee and grits. Okay. So I made my first quilt top. And I need to get it long-armed. I think I'm going to take my friend up on her offer to long-arm it, but I haven't quite gotten in my head what I want the quilt pattern to look like yet. So it'll come to me, right? Also, I made something else with the sewing machine. In July, I went to a retreat at Boxcar Quilts up in Aubrey. It was the best time. It was a very small retreat, just 24-ish people, attendees. It was the best time. That is the coolest venue. It's really for quilt retreats, but they have welcomed us cross-stitchers with open arms. Now, the shop does not have any cross-stitch related stuff, but maybe one day. Maybe one day. So, you know how a retreat is. Everyone wants to shop, so we all ventured over to the quilt shop, and I came back. Like I said, I'm usually a seasonal stitcher. This is a bit out of season, but hey, it's ready for fall. I picked up Hey Boo from Moda. I picked up a charm pack and one of the panels that has all these really fun printed blocks on it. I thought this was so adorable, so I whipped this up in a day. I was totally winging it. I had no pattern whatsoever. I was just winging it, okay? So don't look too close. Like I said, not perfect, but I'm learning. And I did it. I made a binding. I actually found this fun black and white stripe. Told you I love black and white. I found this black and white stripe from Hobby Lobby or Joann's. I believe I got it from Joann's. And I just made the little self-binding out of it. Now, stripes are hard, so you'll notice it gets a little crooked up here. I probably shouldn't point out all my mistakes. Let me just cover it up with my hand. So this is a little project mat that I made for retreating. I'm looking forward to going to Garon's retreat, Stitching in the Wild, in September. So it'll be almost fall then. So you think I can get away with using this at the retreat? What I was going to say is that Boxcar, they have these big tables. It's not traditional setup for a cross-stitch retreat with the round tables. So you have a little bit more room. And I'll say, as much as I love the white table surfaces, they were a little bit kind of harsh. It was really, sometimes it was making it where I couldn't see great. So I found that, a placemat was really great because it just kind of helped break up some of that white. Plus it's cute. So more placemats are probably in my future. Okay, so that'll be all as far as sewing projects go. Now, will there be more sewing projects in future videos? Yes, there will, because I have purchased more fabrics. Okay, now we'll get into, I'm trying to reorganize my hot mess. Now we'll get into FFOs that I finished myself this summer. Now, whether these were from that pile or things that I actually stitched this summer, we can just talk about that as we go. The first one is Heart and Hand Summer Whirligig, and you guys probably recognize this. Excuse me, I have creaky old antique chairs that I had to scoot up. You will probably recognize this because Priscilla Blaine from Stitching with the Housewives stitched this series, and I was so inspired by her. I love how she would take old antique pieces and turn them into cross-stitch finishes. So this is pre-Flosstube. Was I writing anything down? No. Does it have black coffee and grits? Yes. that's probably all I can tell you about. It was like a scrap of linen, but I finished this in an old antique pie tin, and I've stitched this whole series. And I've really enjoyed it. I do have a few more in the stash for future projects. Oh my, if you saw the table, you would say, where is she going to put all this mess? And I don't know. I'm just going to keep rearranging it until hopefully there's not an avalanche. Okay, the next project that I finished over the summer, super simple finish, is a piece from Pine Mountain Designs. This is a summer typography pattern. I use my own floss colors, coloring cotton floss. I'm in their thread club, and so I just picked some of their bright, bold, summery colors. I do know I stitched this on a piece of beanstalk from Fiber on a Whim because it's one of my favorite fabrics, and I've used it multiple times. So this little frame came from Hobby Lobby. I actually took the glass out because it was a little bit tight getting it in the back, and I popped it in a frame. Always feels good to finish something, to really FFO it. Okay, so I don't live alone, and I actually just heard my little guy getting up. I won't tell you what time it is. We're still on summer schedule, but he was sleeping in, so we may hear him around and about. I didn't tell you that I have 2 dogs, but I do, and I'll be quiet about saying their names because, you know, they'll perk their little ears up, and I don't want them to get into their chit-chatting. But I'm a Chihuahua mom, and I love those little dogs. They are everything to me. Okay, next, FFO. I did this one myself as well. This is from the Teresa Kogut book, Broad Stripes and Bright Stars. I stitched this with my friend Teresa, the Garden Goose Stitcher. We both bought this book at the same time, and so we've stitched a couple of pieces out of it, sewed them together. As you guys know, she loves a sow, a good sow. If you want to stitch along with us, I will pop the hashtag for the sow in the comments, and you can follow along on those over on Instagram with us. So, found this old barnwood frame at Hobby Lobby, loved it. Actually laced this piece myself. This was the first piece that I laced. I might have overdone it, maybe. But I wanted to experiment with some different finishing styles. This was stitched on a piece of Bramble by Picture This Plus. I use Bramble a lot too because I bought a whole yard of it. I love it. So a lot of the pieces you'll see me stitching are on that Bramble. I did use some of my own flosses. Again, you can find all those color conversions over on Instagram if you want to know, but I know I use some coloring cotton floss. I love their flosses. So bright and beautiful, and some of them are really variegated, like that blue that was on the hill. Okay, hopefully I'm showing these to you and holding them up long enough that you're getting to see them. I will improve, I think. I do always try. Okay, I told a lie already. Not intentionally, but I do have some more quote-unquote sewing things to show you, but they are cross-stitch related. The last FFO'd piece that I completed this summer on like a framed type piece, this is a tray I got from Hobby Lobby probably, is June wordplay from With Thy Needle and Thread. I stitched this whole series almost. I have one more left to complete in November, and I have been trying to FFO these each month. Now, have I FFO July or August yet? No, I have not, but I will. I'm going to because they're just too cute not to. So this piece was stitched on, and almost all of these I picked my own color conversion. I do know I stitched this on a piece of blue fabric from Hobby Lobby. Again, notes and details. Ask me always, or check Instagram. And if it's not on Instagram, do ask me because I do have a lot of them written down. I was good later about, not at the beginning of my cross-stitching adventure, but later I was good about writing things down. I said I wasn't going to say and I did. Sorry. I also told myself not to apologize 1,000 times, but I think I'm a serial apologizer. Pillow finishes. That's the other thing that when I got my Juki, I had all these cross stitches that I had made that I intended to put into a dough bowl. I had the dough bowl, but I didn't know how to sew a pillow. I didn't even have a sewing machine. What am I even talking about? So I watched Lori Holt's tutorial, her pillow finishing tutorial. I'm going to grab these out of the dough bowl where they're precariously sitting behind me. That's not where that really goes. It's just, it was there for easy access. Okay, so I watched Lori Holt's tutorial for how to finish a pillow, and I love her tutorial. It's very easy to follow. I liked the fact that you didn't have to do hand stitching down here. You use the wool or felt to cover up the back where you cut and stuff it. And probably the hardest part about it was really the stuffing. Oh, and I made some Frankenstein stitches under here, but no one will ever see it. So I don't know. I'm always telling you guys my dirty business. I didn't have to tell you that. I'm telling you about all my mistakes. That's okay. You know why I'm telling you about all my mistakes? Because I don't want you to be afraid to create things. Just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is not perfect. And I love it just the same. I love the beauty in things that are handmade. If you can tell that it's handmade, I mean, doesn't that just add to the value of it? I think it does. So my corners are not perfect on this first pillow. Did I learn something? Yes, I did. Will I do better corners in the future? Probably. Probably. This is an adorable Emily Call stitching pattern. Her charts are to be found on Etsy. I love her. I got to meet her up at Pine Needles in Utah back in April. She's the sweetest ever. So this is summer, her pattern summer, and I have a lot of more of her charts. I actually just bought a couple more for fall. I'm ready for fall, so I'll be stitching more of these in the future. But this is summer, stitch on Picture This Plus Bringable with the called for color and cotton flosses. And I love this. This is so bright and cheerful. And on the back, I just did a little dot type fabric, probably from Joann's. And then, like I said, I used the felt. I picked up this felt at Hobby Lobby. It's a little thicker than I would have liked, but it is wool. And then per Lori's instructions, I put a cute little button on the back and I cut out a cute little felt heart. So that is pillow finish numero uno. Then, I'm not sure what order I actually finished these in, but I think this was the next one. Could be wrong. Does it really matter? Probably not. Then I stitched from Tiny Modernist this pattern called Spring Chicken. I love her. I do know I substituted a few of the colors on this one. I don't know what I stitched this on because a lot of times for these pillows I use scraps and I'm not good about labeling my scraps. And now that I'm a quilter, I'm finding that I don't want to throw away scraps. I'm keeping scraps like crazy. I do know that I used black coffee and grits on my chicken. And I had such a fun time stitching this. It did take a little bit more time than I thought it would, but it was a fun stitch. And I used the same yellow from Color and Cotton that was called for on the Emily Call piece because I wanted to kind of tie these together with that yellow. So Tiny Modernist, Spring Chicken, finished the Lori Holt tutorial method. I used a solid piece of fabric on the back, contrast felt, and fun contrast buttons with a little cute safety pin. I should just put these back. I'm not always good at putting things back where they go. I got on a pillow finishing roll. I mean, once you know how, it doesn't really take that long. I'm not scared anymore. So This is a pattern that I stitched at StitchCon in 2023, or I started it at StitchCon and then I finished it after I got home. It is Make It Sweet by Sweet Wing Studio, and I got to meet her at that retreat. Susan, she's super sweet also. So I got to start this and show it to her, and I thought that was really fun. And I finally FFO'd it, Susan. I stopped being afraid and I got a sewing machine. This is stitched on, let me tell you what it's stitched on. Barnyard Check from Zweigart. I actually picked this piece up from Color and Cotton on that same trip because we went to Color and Cotton up in St. Louis, Missouri on the way to StitchCon. Took a road trip there. So, you know, you've got to stop at all of the fun cross-stitch shops along the way, don't you? And then I'm pretty sure I used the call for flosses. Pretty sure. There should be notes for that on Instagram. Oh, I'm out of water. Now I'm going to make that awful sound. I'm not going to do that to you guys. So what else did I want to tell you about this? I used a little check on the back, again a little piece of felt and a button, and I did use a little 2023 charm on the back that I think someone gave that to me at StitchCon. So many people at retreats are so kind and generous and give you all kinds of little fun treasures. Okay, as I creak my chair again, I'll get that put away. We are probably a little more than halfway through that finishes. Y'all, I have more still to show you. I'm going to show you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7-ish more finishes, because I'm not sure I really counted them all good. But these are things that I finished stitching over the summer, but they're not FFO'd yet. And I'm not going to do them in any certain order, but I will show this first because it's almost FFO'd. It's almost FFO'd. This is, hold on, I have the chart right here. This is, I'm not sure which, I think she calls this the Home Alone ornament. It says, Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. From cutesy.crafts.com. It's a freebie. So go to Cutesy Crafts. I'll put it in the notes. Cutesycrafts.com, and you can download this free chart. My friend Lisa kitted this up for me at the boxcar retreats. It had a Christmas in July theme, and so like I said, I'm not normally an out-of-season stitcher, but it went with the theme of the retreat, and I finished this just in a few hours. Like, it didn't take that long. So we love Home Alone. It's one of our very favorite Christmas movies. It's like a must watch. So I had to stitch this. So when I say it's almost FFO'd, it's in pieces. I took a round finishing class at the boxcar. It was so helpful. I really enjoyed it. Learned some new methods. It's always good. Like, I've done round finishes before, but I think it's always good to learn something new. So what do you call this? I just said it earlier. It's not webbing. You guys, you will learn if you stick with me that sometimes I just lose words and they're just gone. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. You guys are probably all yelling it at me. And when I rewatch the video or in the middle of the night, I will think of the word. I'm sorry. Sometimes they're just not there. I've almost finished FFOing this. I think I'm going to paint this frame, this little hoop, and then I'm going to glue this. And then, you know, obviously it needs a hooky thingy. A hanging implement. You guys, sometimes words just totally escape me. Thank you, Lisa, for that awesome pattern. I really enjoyed stitching with you at Boxcar. She's a sweetheart and a hoot. Like, she keeps me in stitches. We're learning to quilt together too. Okay, let me look through this pile real quick and make sure I've done all this. Okay, I think I'm good. back to my notes for a second. Let me, it doesn't matter. These don't need to be shown in order. Sometimes I get overly, I don't want to say OCD, but I get a little bit OCD. You don't need, just as we go through these, I'll tell you little stories. When I got back from StitchCon, I was in the mood for another sampler. This is another freebie chart. This is a Blackbird chart called Now I Know My ABCs. I pulled out a skein of floss that was in my stash. I know I wrote this down. Again, it's on Instagram. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a silk. It's a variegated, like very variegated silk. So I only used one floss on this, and I love the way it turned out. It's really fun, and it has some of my favorite colors. So I think I'm gonna make this into a little dough bowl pillow. That was like in the back of my mind when I was stitching it, what I was gonna do with it. This is on a scrap of fabric. Details on Instagram. Okay, I'm not gonna worry about not knowing all the things. One can just simply not retain everything. Do I have memory issues? Maybe, perhaps. Do I have ADD? Maybe, perhaps. Okay, undiagnosed. The other thing I finished this summer is the sweet little Grow Whirligig from that Heart in Hand series. I love how this one turned out. I started stitching this back in Mania of 2022. Do you guys do Mania? I did it once. I don't know if it's for me. It got a little wild. It was a lot of fun, but it was a lot. Trying to be organized and stay on task and do all the things, but this was a super fun little stitch. And these don't take long. These are just like, I started this in Mania of 2022, but this is like a 1 day, 2 days max project. Took a little while to get back to it. What else did I stitch this summer? Another piece from Broad Stripes and Bright Stars by Teresa Kogut. This is Our Trust. I love this. This is on Weeks Dye Works Aztec Red. This is now one of my favorite fabrics. Look how pretty this is. This is so beautiful and bold, and yet the colors still pop on it. And I was nervous about the reds and whether they would show up, but they do, and they look amazing, and I absolutely love it. And hopefully you guys are able to see this really well because it is super sunny in here today. What else do I want to tell you about this? I used Weeks Dye Works Aztec Red 30 count. I really enjoyed stitching on 30 count this last summer. Like I said, never say never. I'm one of those experimental stitchers. I don't always think that the count needs to go higher to be challenged or something. Like, yes, I also did say I would never stitch on 40 count, and I have. Because I stitched on it back at Stitch Niche in 2015-ish and didn't know that I was stitching on 40 count. What you don't know won't hurt you. But sometimes I pick a higher, like 30 count, a lower count fabric, something with larger holes. This was just so easy to see, and it was really enjoyable to stitch on, and sometimes that's what it's about, is like enjoying the stitch. I stitched in the car a lot this summer as we road tripped up to StitchCon. I finished this when we got back. This is also one that I am salling, or I did sal with my friend Teresa, the Garden Goose Stitcher. So if you're not following her, hit her up. She has a Flosstube too. And an Instagram. And she actually really gardens. I would like to think that I garden. I don't really garden. It's too hot. It's too hot. It just burns up. It's gone. I wish. Okay, I think I said all the things about that I wanted to say. Told you I'm a seasonal stitcher. This is another project that I finished this summer. This is America by Blackbird Designs. I know. This is one of those charts that's out of print. Highly desirable. I was loaned this chart. Sweet person loaned this to me. I stitched it on vintage smoky white. I used some of the called for. I did substitute some of the colors, the flag colors. I really wanted those to be variegated and bolder And did I use grits on this? Yes, I did. I love grits. You guys know that. I also did change a bit about this. So over here, I think, or maybe it was over here, somewhere in the pattern there was a little jog, and I couldn't stand it. So I adapted it. So I was stitching this. I was selling this with my friend Karen, the Indie Stitcher, on Instagram. She doesn't have a Flosstube, but she does have an Etsy shop where she makes awesome stickers for your book a days. And I love those. I had a lot of fun stitching that. She finished before I did. She finished it on Flag Day, which was so smart. I finished it shortly after. Okay, in May, I wanted to do a birthday sale. I've never done a birthday sale before. So in May, I picked out Summer Jubilee by Blackbird Designs. Am I on a Blackbird kick? Possibly. I really enjoyed stitching this. This is also a piece that I stitched on 30 count linen. The fabric is Irish Bog Sky by the Primitive Hair, and it's beautiful. Like, it is beautiful. I picked this up when I was at Stitch New England in Pam's shop up in the Boston area. That was a really fun retreat that I went to too. So I picked this up and it was in my stash, and I was like, this is perfect. Perfect for it. And I enjoyed stitching on 30 count again. I actually rang the bell for this at StitchCon. So it was a StitchCon finish, and I'm going to frame it. And I did use all the called for floss on this, the overdyes. And it's not necessarily my kind of color palette, a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but I did it and I love it. I think it's beautiful. Oh, also, Callie from the Floss Spots and Cousins is also stitching this for her birthday. I guess we're kindred spirits in that way. So I'll pop her hashtag and my hashtag down below. I'm finished, but it's always fun to see other stitchers' progress. So follow along and maybe stitch yours with Callie for her birthday. Is that all I wanted to say about that? I think it is. Okay. Will you guys get tired of me saying the same things? Possibly. The last thing I finished this summer, I want summer to be over. Summer's not quite over. I want it to be over, but it's not quite over. The last thing I have left to show you, I was also stitching on this at StitchCon. I don't remember when I started this. I probably do have a note card for it. Yes, I do have a note card for it, but I didn't write down when I started this. This was a market release from this past year. The pattern is a stitch in time saves 9, or once around the floss box. It is a Shakespeare's Peddler sampler. I bet you can't guess why I fell for this. Actually, I bet you can. It's so colorful. It's so colorful. I loved all the colors. It has a ridiculous number of DMC flosses for like how tiny this is. But it was super fun to stitch. I stitched it on 32 count mushroom bold linen from Color and Cotton. That was from my subscription. And I used the call for DMCs, but I did move some of the colors around a bit because A, I wanted to make it more mine, and B, some of the colors just didn't quite show up on my fabric as boldly, but I went with it. Ghosting doesn't necessarily bother me. I feel like with cross stitch, it's needle art. Like, you got to get in there and look at it. I bet you guys can't guess what I substituted. I bet you can, actually. I substituted black coffee for 310 because why? I don't like that harsh 310, and I just love the variegation of black coffee. So I put black coffee in this. I didn't put any grids in it. I did put my name on it, and I put Fort Worth, Texas, and June 2024 at the bottom. I charted that, and that was a little bit of a challenge, but I think I made it work. So that one's in the pile to get FFO'd. I think I'm gonna frame that. Okay, we've reached the end of the pile. What next? that's as far as I charted out. Like, I didn't map anything beyond here. So I don't have plans for what I'm going to say. I don't have plans for what I'm going to do in the future. I'm kind of someone that definitely wings it a little bit. And then sometimes I'm over organized. I told you guys, organized chaos. That's who I am. So future videos. I think I'm going to do a whip parade. And like I said, maybe a finished parade as far as like the old stuff that's hanging out in the pile. Because I only showed you today finishes that were from this summer. But I have like an un-FFO'd pile, an FO pile. Oh gosh. Lisa, stop. Okay. Maybe we'll do another video of those. I'm not sure. But eventually my plan is to get into a monthly like check-in Flosstube kind of video, I think. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Like and subscribe. I would love that if you would. I said I wasn't going to say anymore, but I did. I'm sorry. I will include at the end of this how to find me on Instagram, which is Black Coffee and Grits. For usernames, they don't allow spaces, so it's just Black Coffee and Grits all, squished together with no spaces. But I'll include a little slide for that so you'll know how to find me. And thank you all for watching and for tuning in. And I would like to say happy stitching, everyone, and I'll see you soon. Bye.